It's a question I've asked myself frequently, knowingly or unknowingly. When I roll up the windows of my car to listen to Bollywood music, only to roll them back down again to listen to Western pop music, that question is going on somewhere in my mind. When I dress up in a sari to attend an Asian event and trousers and a top to go out with my friends, the dialogue of who I am is going on internally in my subconscious mind.
Who I am is a question I've been asked frequently, intentionally or unintentionally by others. When you ask me where I'm from, even though I was born in England, have a British passport and a British accent. When you ask me to go back to where I'm from, even though where I'm from was Birmingham, you are also struggling to answer the question of who I am.
The truth is that who I am is a very complex question, because who I am is not only defined by the colour of my skin. The story of my identity began many generations before I was born. Who I am is the sum total of the life stories of my entire ancestry and what they went through before arriving in Britain. To know who I am, you will have to know my entire story. And when you do, you may basically find that I'm not so different from you.
Like you, all I want to be able to do is express myself in a safe environment and to live happily like everyone else. All else is just details. So, this is the story of who I am.
All right, that's my cue. Hello, my name is Lottie. It's short for Charlotte, which is your version of Charlotte, which is my actual name. Look at these.
They can't see them.
Oh, anyway, he sent me these postcards of mountains and valleys and wrote on the back of one of them, "Isn't it beautiful? It's called the Lake District. This is Britain." Then he sent me the plane ticket and brought me to his home in Osterley. To this day, I've never seen the Lake District. Let that be a lesson to all you ladies. If a man sends you postcards of the Taj Mahal and writes, "This is India, you'll love it," that is not where he lives. That is not where you'll live. Anyway, so that's how I arrived in Britain.
When you move to a new country, you start to lose your old identity so gradually that you don't even notice it because you're busy trying to embrace a new culture. The process begins as soon as you land because you're already in the mode of trying to adapt, trying to find security in a strange land.
The first obstacle I faced was the language. I thought I understood English until I arrived here and someone asked me, "How do you?" I just stared at her. She repeated the questions a few times and then just walked away thinking that I was being unfriendly. I spent the rest of the day repeating the sounds she made to myself, wondering what they might mean. How do you? How do you? How do you? Of course, now I know that she was asking my age.
It only hits you much later when you visit your homeland again. Just how much you've changed, and more importantly, that your homeland has since moved on to, and no longer feels like the home you once knew. No longer feels like the home you once knew. No longer feels like...
Oh, my cue! That's my cue. I'm Sadoshini. People lost calories trying to pronounce that, so now I'm known as Sue. We came to England to have a better life, but my first memory was of walking into the kitchen and seeing a pile of dishes in the sink. I shouted, "Ai Geeta!" and then realized that there is no Geeta here. I'll have to wash them myself. You see, back in India, we had household help to do that kind of thing. Suddenly, I was doing all the housework myself.
And then there was the weather.
Oh, the weather.
It's not like our monsoon downpours, nor is it dry and sunny. It's some kind of strange deal in the middle, like walking past a garden sprinkler when the wind is blowing. When I first heard your expression, "It's pissing down," the first thing I thought was your God has prostate issues.
And so cold. I used to write letters to my mother back in India telling her about how cold it was. We all used to be sat around an electric fan heater which used to blow out warm air and make a sound like which was almost as annoying as the cold itself. My mother never received those letters. Well, somebody should have told me that there are 2 types of red boxes on the street and only one of them is a letterbox. The other is a dustbin.
The hardest thing, though, wasn't God's prostate problems baptizing us half-heartedly day after day. Nor was it the cold. It was the loneliness.
Ah, yes, the loneliness.
You see, India is very communal. In a typical home, you have your parents, your grandparents, your own children, your brothers and sisters, their children, all the children's orphan school friends. And then you might even have servants living with you too, with their own children and probably their own orphan friends. You never have to wait for an invitation to visit your friends either. You just turn up and find the door is already open for you. There are always many people in your life. I miss that.
In the beginning, it was such a struggle. And the only way I got through the loneliness was by going out and finding others who were in the same situation as us. We had to create a community for ourselves, a support structure. Otherwise, how long can you go on feeling like an unwanted guest in someone else's country?
Someone else's country? The only reason Britain was an option was because they were the someone else in our country at some point.
He's the one who sent me the postcards of the Lake District.
Yes, they already know the story. I arrived long before I got married and brought her over.
To Osterley.
There's nothing wrong with Osterley.
It's not the Lake District.
The Lake District is really far and expensive.
You went?
I've never been.
Then how did you get the postcards?
May I continue? You see, I was happily settled in Uganda with my parents. My father was doing business there, but then Idi Amin ordered all Indians to leave the country, and suddenly we were homeless.
Pause. For the benefit of those who've had the misfortune of going through the British education system and therefore have no idea who Idi Amin was, he was the brutal Ugandan military dictator responsible for expelling 60,000 Asians, mainly business owners, from Uganda in 1972.
Their property and businesses were taken from them and they were given 90 days to leave the country. 27,200 Indian refugees arrived in Britain and were initially housed in vacant military camps. They built their lives from scratch and thrived financially, just as they had in East Africa.
Continue.
Oh, we couldn't go back to India. It was a caste thing, and opportunities for our caste were few. What does anyone ever want other than to live a better life? That's why my parents left India for Africa in the first place. And so, we arrived in England searching for opportunities. Not to take from the country, but to exchange. You see, we Gujaratis are good at business. We could sell you back your own dirty socks at a higher price than you bought them for. So, we opened corner shops. But the early days were tough. I mean, really, really tough.
Wait. Let me tell them.
I haven't finished.
Manoj. My name is Manoj. Everyone could say Manoj, so I'm still Manoj. When I first arrived, I went around with my cousin looking for a place to live, only to see signs outside available accommodations with the words, "No Pakis, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish." We had to declare ourselves homeless. Thank God a Jamaican man allowed us to live in his home. He said that he knew the feeling of being discriminated against and took pity on us. And then came the skinhead phase.
Oh God, the skinheads. My father was chased by them once. And why did they keep calling us Pakis?
Paki is short for Pakistani. We're not from Pakistan.
It's like calling British people Swiss. If you're not from Switzerland, why would anyone call you Swiss?
They used to call us Pakis, and when I corrected them once, they called me a filthy Arab. I'm not an Arab either.
We're not Arabs.
Pakistanis aren't even Arabs.
We're from India.
Now that I think back on it, Indians, Pakistanis, Arabs, to them we're all the same. They simply couldn't differentiate one foreigner from another. A lack of education. In fact, in my history class at Austerley Grammar School, our history teacher told the class that the British taught the Indians to wear clothes.
No.
You're right. It comes down to education.
Pause. The current British education system consists of the following syllabus at History GCSE level: North America, Russia, Germany, the First World War, the Second World War, the Cold War, Korean War, Gulf War, and Iraq War.
And at History A level, the First World War, Second World War, the spread of communism, conflicts in the Middle East, France, industrialisation in Britain, the Russian Revolution, the American Civil War, China and Japan.
No mention of Britain's 400 years of colonialism, which would have explained to people why we are here and how we got here. We are a product of British imperialism.
Continue.
You see, back in Africa, we were still a minority, but because of the residue of colonial attitudes, we were somehow placed under the whites but above the blacks. So it was still a privileged position. But when we moved to Britain, we were a minority. I mean, proper minority. No privileges.
I mentioned the skinheads earlier, but sometimes it was the subtler forms of racism that hurt the most. Like when you sweep the floor at work and someone waits for you to finish before they throw rubbish on the floor you just cleaned. Just that they can tell you that you haven't done your job.
Or worse, when a colleague you consider a friend watches you wash your hands and says, "Why do you bother? It's not like you can see it anyway." You see, these were things we heard regularly, and we just had to get used to it.
I was sitting on a bus once when a young girl wearing a white t-shirt approached me and started rubbing my skin with her shirt to get the dirt off. She kept looking back at her shirt, but it had no mark on it. It was just my skin colour. I got off at the next stop as I felt bad. It wasn't her fault.
I remember when, on one sunny afternoon, I went to the park and sat on the grass to eat my lunch, when a man walked past and asked, "Don't you have chairs in your country?" He was younger than me and in his teens.
For me, the biggest shock was listening to people younger than you calling you names, especially when you've just arrived from a country where people younger than you touch your feet out of respect for your age. It made me want to just stay indoors and hide. But whether I liked it or not, I had to go out to work.
We did jobs we would have never done back in India, but we were starting from the beginning again, so we had no choice.
I still remember those days, wearing a sari and slippers in the snow and walking miles to the factory where I worked.
Those were hard times.
There were funny sides to all this though too. British people found our names too long and complicated. My husband's name is Bhupendra, and as you know, my name is Charlotta. So they shortened his name to Bob. We were known as Bob and Lottie. Sounds cute, no?
It's not cute. It's sad. Because Bhupendra means the king of gods. And Bob was a shilling.
Talking of our names, you must have noticed how Indian names have become shorter and shorter with every generation of British Asians. That, my friends, was for your benefit.
But all in all, things did eventually get easier once we found our feet. We formed our own communities and gathered together. The women folk helped each other out during pregnancies.
We built temples and centres where we could keep our culture alive. Not just for ourselves, but for our children too. We held cultural events and slowly Britain began to feel like home to us.
So much so that whenever I visit India now, I can't wait to return back to England again. Because here is where I feel at home. My home is where my children are, where my friends are, where my house is. And so home for me is Britain.
Talking of children, that was another shock altogether. They were growing up speaking with a British accent. You know, how old are you?
And behaving like the English children their age.
Streaks of colour in their hair.
Clothes 2 sizes too small.
They were growing up to be
Foreigners.
You see, my parents knew who they were. They were Indians who had settled in Britain. But who was I? I only knew Britain. So my parents' own culture was kind of alien to me, and that made it difficult for them to relate to me.
If I spoke back to my parents, my mum would say,
Why are you acting like a white person?
they were desperately trying to connect me to Indian culture with the reverence given to elders and so on, but they found me becoming too Western for their liking. Some of their generation jokingly called us
Coconuts! Brown on the outside and white on the inside.
If only it was so simple. We were not entirely white on the inside. After all, at home, we spoke our mother tongue, we ate Indian food, we were raised with Indian values and were exposed to the Indian culture. So when we stepped out of the house, we were also considered too Indian to fit perfectly into this English community.
It was a case of being too white for the Indians and too Indian for the whites. What do you do with that?
You feel like someone living in no man's land, not belonging to any single culture, but being stuck between two cultures. I lived like a chameleon, doing the Asian thing on the weekends at community events, and then doing the English thing on weekdays with friends.
Dressing up in Asian clothes around Asians and Western around English people.
My mum noticed me desperately trying to fit into Western culture and once said,
The problem with your generation is that you're all mango trees expecting apples to grow.
This is kind of true, but I think even she didn't get it entirely right, because at home we were also like apple trees expecting mangoes to grow, when in actual fact we were probably more like lone pomegranates surrounded by a bunch of mangoes and apples.
So we ended up doing the very same thing our parents did when they arrived, seeking refuge in a community. In our case, a community of other pomegranates. In school we formed small tribes of other British Asians where we could feel safe.
Underlying all of this was a fear of not being accepted. Because of the hard work and struggle our parents went through, we were raised in a secure home environment. But the feeling of truly being at home is actually nothing to do with the physical space. It has to do with acceptance of who you really are.
And how can you feel accepted when you're constantly asked, where are you from? Even though you were born and raised in Britain. And when you respond, I'm British, the response you get is, no, where are you really from?
And the worst thing is, no one around you talks about it. It was the inability to share what we were going through that gave rise to a feeling of shame. I felt embarrassed to be Indian.
I felt embarrassed to like a Bollywood song or even be seen in Indian clothes.
You see, my father sat on the grass in the park and someone asked him, "Don't you have chairs in your country?" He thought to himself,
Oh, ignore him. He's just ignorant.
but then, another 25 years later, I sat down on the grass in the park and someone walked past and asked me the exact same question. "Don't you have chairs in your country?" The first thing I thought was, but I thought this is my country.
Many of us went through a phase of thinking, okay, well, if Britain isn't actually my country, then let me go back to India, believing that when we arrive, we'll feel like, this is where I belong. But no, they look at us as foreigners there too. My Gujarati is mixed up with Swahili. My accent is mixed with English. My body language is different. My dress sense is different. My outlook is different. I stand out like a sore thumb. After all, now I'm a pomegranate in mango country.
So you end up feeling like a foreigner there and a foreigner here too, and worse, you desperately try to fit into either one culture or the other, but never actually managing to fit into either.
And then came life after school.
Hold on. Before you move on to that, I should add that in the playground we were called Pakis! A gentle reminder, we're not from Pakistan.
We're not Arabs. We're not all the same.
What is still the same is education. It was flawed then and it's still flawed now.
I remember being asked in school, if you're really Indian, then where's your feather? So, in America, they thought the Native Americans were Indian. In Britain, they think the real Indians are Pakistanis. And the skinheads apparently think we're all Arabs.
Anyway, life after school. When I entered the job market, suddenly I experienced a new type of racism. Unlike the beta version I'd faced before, this version was perfection. No name calling, no blatant stares, no skinheads chasing you. Suddenly, everything had become subtle and refined, much more respectable.
When you leave an interview thinking, hold on, did that just happen because of my skin colour? Then you know the system is...
They've even got a term for it now. Institutional discrimination. It's built into the system itself.
And just as a side note, long academic terms are often used to replace and soften words to take the harsh edges off direct words like racism, which carry associated history and brutality with them. You hear racism, you think Ku Klux Klan. You hear institutional discrimination, you think, come again. So the dustbin man becomes the waste disposal manager, the fat person becomes the circumferentially challenged, and so on. It's done to smoothen the sharp edges.
And Racism Pro Max, with its smooth and beveled edges, appears so respectable that even if you mention the word racism in this day and age, raised eyebrows and an accusing voice asking,
Racism? That's a very serious accusation you're making, young man. You might want to think twice before making such a serious allegation.
and that will force you to retreat meekly back into your corner and question yourself whether you may have in fact been overreacting.
Now, here's where things got interesting. If my parents were too busy struggling in a new land to indulge in the arts and contemplate life's deeper questions like,
If money doesn't grow on trees, why do banks have branches?
then our privilege has been to have the freedom and space to find our true identities as pomegranates living in a land of mangoes and apples.
You see, I spent so much time trying to find out whether I'm Indian, East African, or British that I failed to realize that I may be all three at the same time and that that's okay.
I realised that the problem was that society and the governing institution was forcing me to identify myself with a range of narrow categories which I simply didn't fit into.
Am I a British Asian or British Indian? British Indian straight? No. British Indian straight with mixed heritage? No. British Indian straight with mixed heritage, born the same gender as I am now? That's the one.
I just tick other because no two human beings are the same and you will not place me in a category. We're not brands of a product on a shelf.
And what's the logic behind are you black, white, Asian, or Chinese? Two of those are colours, one is a region and the other a country? Why not just go all out and ask, are you black, white, brown, or yellow, and be totally stupid?
Why do categories based on the amount of pigment one has in one's skin even exist in the first place? Does it have any medical value to fixate in one's colour? Wouldn't it have more medical value to ask my blood group on a form instead?
There's been an accident. We urgently need blood group AB.
I'm British Indian straight with mixed heritage, born the same gender as I am now.
You see? Not very useful.
I eventually realized that I have the power to define my own identity or not even define it at all. Others may accept how I choose to define it, or they may reject it. But what matters first and foremost is that I'm comfortable in my own skin. That itself brings strength. The strength that our parents and our grandparents had when they first migrated to Britain. The second hurdle is that even if I have accepted myself as a British with Indian heritage, I still have to be accepted by others as being British. Otherwise, integration will always be a problem. As for me, I have made a personal choice to identify myself as a human being first. That way, whether I am in India or in England, I always feel that I'm among my own.
I have chosen to identify myself as a performing artist. Through the arts, I get to express myself as I am, a young British woman with Indian ancestry and Indian heritage. I take that heritage and voice my own unique culture as a British Asian through it. I sing Gujarati songs, but the lyrics aren't about life in Gujarat. They are about life in Britain. But I sing them in the Gujarati folk style that has been passed down to me through my heritage.
I studied law, but then realised that I didn't want to defend people from unjust laws. I wanted to change the laws so that my clients wouldn't need defending in the first place. So, I went back and studied human rights. I eventually entered into politics when I saw that even a politician with the same skin colour as my own was not enough to represent my beliefs and values. I want to adopt a kinder and more humane approach to politics, focusing on more inclusive community building. After Brexit, Trump, and the rise of the right wing, I feel that we desperately need to turn things around.
I had spent so long avoiding wearing Indian clothes outdoors, pretending that I didn't like Indian music and generally hiding my Indianness, that when I finally accepted who I am, I became an Indian classical dancer. Now I dance on stage in front of Western audiences, wearing traditional Indian clothes, dancing to Indian music and celebrating my heritage rather than denying it. When I'm not performing, I give workshops in schools, educating children about our heritage and tradition. I also teach my own students so that they learn to love their own heritage rather than pretending it doesn't exist.
I realised that the discrimination I experienced was rooted in ignorance because of a lack of education. So I see theatre as a vehicle to educate and inform through storytelling. I look to be part of projects that will inform the public about our history so that they will understand exactly why we're here and how we got here. Hopefully then, when a boat full of asylum seekers lands on our shores, rather than jumping to label illegal immigrants, at least people may try to find out their story. Why are they risking their lives? Why did they leave their homes? Could it be that all they want is to have a better life? Could it be that they too have come ready to exchange and contribute in return for the freedom to grow into who they could be? Theatre has the power to answer those questions and inform the public about the migrant's own story.
As for myself, you only learn what you are taught, and I finally learned to accept who I am through my passion for food. My grandmother told me about India through her cooking. Her food held stories and spoke through her recipes. My mother's cooking, on the other hand, contained a fusion of ingredients, each dish expressing how she had adapted to British culture, incorporating local ingredients into traditional Indian dishes. It expressed her adaptability and willingness to embrace her environment without letting go of her own roots. And so, I enjoy sharing my eagerness to connect with you all through my own dishes, expressing who I am, where I'm from, and where I am now.
If you tell the story, you become an activist. So that is why we must tell the stories behind migration, to tell the history of colonialism and its effects. If people knew that over a period of 400 years, the British Empire covered a quarter of the Earth's land, ruled over 458 million people, then perhaps they might not say with so much confidence, "The immigrants are taking our jobs."
And incidentally, just to clarify, Duncan from Barking with 3 GCSEs and a diploma in bricklaying? No. Dr. Khan, the orthopaedic surgeon from Harrow on the Hill, did not take your job.
India has over 121 languages and 19,500 dialects. It has traditionally been a melting pot of different cultures and civilizations as they passed through the country and left their own mark behind. We are not a single community, and this traditional willingness to integrate foreign cultures into our own is reflected in our cooking. We have a way of eating in India which has come to be known as thali. It's simply a large plate with a variety of food, and that variety is nothing but our traditional and innate mentality expressing itself through food. The idea is that through variety, that a balanced meal is attained. It is through variety of inputs, ideas and cultures that we complete each other.
On the other hand, the Western habit is to eat foods one by one. The starters, the main meal, the dessert, etc. Do you see how even the smallest things reveal our deepest attitudes?
Terms like the war on terror, the war on drugs, the fight against cancer, the fight against diabetes. reflect a mentality of us versus the enemy. Then we throw in terms like coexistence, integration, diversity, empathy, and collectivity to try and fix the very expressions of our flawed mentality.
There has been a silent war on immigration that continues until today. Through education, whether in schools or through the arts and culture, let us remove the word war so that we can at least begin to see that the immigrant is a mere reflection of ourselves. We both want a better life. We both want to live without fear. If we both want to help complete each other, maybe then the ideals of coexistence, integration, diversity, empathy, and collectivity won't need to be spelled out, as they will already exist naturally and effortlessly.
Otherwise, all we will have is patchwork, like adding a choice of 5 skin tones for a thumbs up emoji to give the impression of inclusivity. It covers up underlying and deep-rooted racism.
And silence gives out its own message. Silence affirms that the culprit is correct, so one shouldn't keep quiet. Let us work through this together.
Let us together take a look at ourselves and each other and ask the question, who am I?
We may find that we are not different from each other at all, just a variety of foods belonging to one single thali.
A wide range of pomegranates, mangoes, and apples, all looking to live life to the fullest.